Hey everyone, Emma here, also known as 8vinyllow, bringing you guys another video. Today's video is going to be my response to the Vinyl Tag 2020. I'm super excited about this video. I've been wanting to sit down and film it for quite some time now, the past couple of weeks, but I've been kind of busy, so finally found time to sit and make this. I'm super excited about this video. This is the first vinyl tag that I am participating in since I started my channel. I remember even before I started making videos and before I joined the vinyl community, I remember watching vinyl community, vinyl tags, even before I started doing videos myself. So it's super cool to finally be able to participate as a member of the vinyl community in the vinyl tag. So Vinyl Tag 2020. I'm also super excited to finally be making this video also because I have yet to watch any vinyl tag videos that have been posted in the vinyl community. Number one reason being is because I wanted to make sure that I created my video and my response kind of with a fresh head without any influence from any other videos. So I didn't want to watch any other videos and be swayed one way or another. Sometimes you're unconsciously swayed that way. So like I said, I wanted to go in fresh and have it kind of be my own thing. So I'm super excited to upload this video and then go back and try to catch up watching all of the amazing, I'm sure, vinyl tag videos. So excited about that as well. But what we're going to do now is we will get right into it. There are 20 questions to the 2020 vinyl tag. I'm sure by now, being 3 weeks into the new year, that if you watch other vinyl community videos, you've heard these questions before. So, but if not, or forever, you know, for whatever reason it is and you want to follow along with the questions, I'm going to post the questions down in the comments below. So we'll get started here. 2 minutes in, let's go. Question number 1 is Best Find 2019. I have 2 separate albums that I'm going to show with 2 separate kind of takes on this question. The first album that I'm going to show is going to be my favorite album that I have added into my collection in 2019. 2019 was a huge year for me in terms of building my collection. It's when I started making videos and joined the vinyl community, as well as when I started to really expand my collection and fall in love with record collecting. I've been record collecting for probably 3-4 years now, but this past year I've really built my collection and have learned so much about music thanks to being a part of the vinyl community. So 2019 was a great year for that. So Best Find 2019, this is my favorite album added in my collection, although it's not a personal find. This is Cheap Trick's The Latest, release from 2009. This is my all-time grail, and if you remember, if you've seen my previous videos, you remember that I received this as VCLT from Legendary Jim. By far my favorite addition to my collection in 2019, as well as probably forever, because when they pressed this album on vinyl, it was very limited, and then of course being now 2020, this being back in 2009, the limited release makes it extremely hard to find this album, and when I did find this album, it was over $200, and I couldn't spend that. So I'm not going to say much more about this because my reaction to this and my kind of description and commentary is in that previous VCLT video, but by far my all-time grail and super excited to have this in my collection. Best edition, best find, quote-unquote, of 2019. In terms of personal finds, something that I found myself that I've added to my collection, this one is probably my favorite. This is Taste's debut album. I know that I have talked about this album plenty of times on this channel, so I won't really go into it. There's the label there for all my label fans. I know that you're out there because you comment. Sometimes I forget to show them. But you can't go wrong with Rory Gallagher. This album as well is extremely hard to find. The copy that I was able to find for the price I was able to find in the condition that it is why it's my favorite find of 2019. I got this for an incredible price, and this is definitely a VG plus, probably plus on both the cover and also the wax itself. So my favorite find of 2019 that I personally found. Taste. Okay, number 2, favorite album 2019. I'm 100% positive I am the only person who is going to show this album and this vinyl tag. But I am 8vinyllow, so there has to be Cheap Trick in here, and there's going to be a lot more, so stay tuned. Oh Boy. This is from Miles Nielsen and the Rusted Hearts. I've talked about them a couple of times on my channel. Miles Nielsen is the son of Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. Everybody knows Rick. And this is an album that Miles Nielsen and his band The Rusted Hearts released this year called Oh Boy. Fantastic record. I love it. I'm a huge fan of Miles Nielsen and the Rusted Hearts, not just because of the Cheap Trick connection, but because of their sound. They have a very unique folk sound to them that I recommend anyone who's into that sort of genre, soft, folky, different, irresistible sound, to go check them out. They released a really great album called Heavy Metal, which I'm sure I'll get into, and I think I've shared before a couple of years ago, I believe. But this is their newer release from 2019, and it is incredible. There is a track on here called Moonlit Ride that I absolutely love. It's so good, and I cannot recommend this album more. So, going with Oh Boy. Okay, number 3, Novelty Record. I have a few of these that I could have shown, but this is one of my favorite novelty records that I have. Again, we're going to stick with the Cheap Trick theme here. This is Cheap Trick's The Flame, and as you can see, it's kind of a 45 7-inch picture disc with a take on the song The Flame there, with the flames bursting out of the record itself. So, one of my favorite picture discs. I have a few Cheap Trick picture discs that I probably could have chosen for this, but I thought that this one was one of the most unique. My favorite picture disc that is the most unique in my collection, I'm going to hold off to show for another video, but for the sake of this, here is the Novelty Record, Cheap Trick's The Flame, 7-inch picture disc. Love this. Okay, number 4, an homage cover that pays homage to another artist. We're going to stick with Cheap Trick again. Alright, so this is, and I've talked about this album so many times, it's my favorite Cheap Trick record. This is Cheap Trick's debut album from 1977. As you can see, a very unique album cover. Okay, and then this is the record that pays homage to that. This is Big Black. Big Black is a, or was a, I don't think they're still around, or they might be, I'm not sure. But they are a punk band from Evanston, Illinois from the late 80s. And this is, as you can see, this is kind of their take on that cover. They also perform a song on here, as you can see at the bottom, called He's a Whore. That's a cover of a Cheap Trick song that is on that debut album. Fantastic song. So, if you want to see them together, to really see the resemblance, there you go. Okay. Alright, something funky. Oh no, I skipped one. Number 5, B-side or deep cut. I have to go with this one. There's so many B-sides and deep cuts I could have chosen. Sticking with Cheap Trick again. I have to pick this one for sentimental reasons because it's where I get my channel name from, and it's one of my favorite Cheap Trick songs, and definitely underrated, and definitely a deep cut, and definitely a lot of people don't know about it, even people who may be familiar with Cheap Trick. It comes from Cheap Trick's 1997 self-titled. I really wish they would press this on vinyl, but they did not, so that's a dream of mine, you know. I've seen those threads around saying albums that you wish were on vinyl. This is definitely one of them. And the track that I'm going with is number 10, 8 Miles Low. Love this song, of course. I get my channel name 8vinyllow from the song 8 Miles Low, who Rick Nielsen took from the Byrds' 8 Miles High. So, that's my deep cut I'm going with. Incredible song. Dark song, but incredible. Alright, number 6, Something Funky. This is the first thing, or album, I guess not thing, album that came to my head. First one. Stand by Sly and the Family Stone. This is definitely funky. So, first one that came to my head. Alright. Number 7, Weird Shelf Buddies. Records next to each other that make an odd pair. I thought this was extremely weird. Some of these questions you don't think about often, especially this one. When you're going through records, you don't think, oh, this is really odd that these are next to each other. At least I don't. So I really liked this question, and as I was going through, there were a variety of different choices that I could have gone with, but I went with this one because it was bizarre to me. We have Chubby Checker's Greatest Hits and The Clash Combat Rock. It's a little weird. So, yeah, going with that. Okay, number 8, I Was There, a band that I have seen. I go to a lot of concerts. I know I could put Cheap Trick here. Concerts is like another passion of mine. I like guitar picks, I like concerts, and I like collecting records and physical media, which all falls under my love for music, that category. So I could have gone with Cheap Trick, obviously. I could have gone with a few other artists and bands. So to try to kind of narrow it down to make a decision, what I'm going with is a band that I've seen the most. And surprisingly, no, it's not Cheap Trick. I've talked about this band before on my channel as well. They're one of my favorites for sentimental reasons because this was the first band that I have ever seen live. This is the Ides of March, a Chicago-based band, more specifically Berwyn, Illinois. This is their most well-known album, Vehicle. And as you can see, I got this record actually signed this summer when I saw them in July. That was the first time that I've seen them in probably over 3 or 4 years. So that was super exciting. I'm not going to go too much into it because I've talked about it a lot, but basically a band that I used to see when I was a kid, probably from 8 years old to 15 or 16 quite regularly. I would see them in the summertime. They would play summer festivals around the Chicagoland area. I would see them all the time. I'm a huge fan of Jim Peterick, who you might know with Survivor and 38 Special. This was his band, the Ides of March, before that, so Jim threw me my first guitar pick, those types of stories. So, band that I've seen the most, Ides of March. Number 9. Wish I had an OG copy, but I have a repress. I could have picked a few different albums for this, but this one stood out as I was going through. Albert King, Born Under a Bad Sign. I don't know why I wanted to say band. Born Under a Bad Sign, Albert King. One of the best records of all time. This is a repress, which actually sounds incredible. I have nothing negative to say about this pressing, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. Bad collector here. But definitely a record just because it is one of the best of all time, and I love Albert King and I love the blues. I would think it would be extremely cool to own an OG. So, going with that. Number 10, a discography that I own. You own all major releases of an artist or artists you own the most of. Okay, we're going to do a quick break here. I'm going to let you guess what you think it is, which artist or band I own the most of. I'm sure all of you are right. It is Cheap Trick. I have nothing else to say. It is Cheap Trick. Good job. Okay, number 11, Unique Center Label. I'm going with Nonagon Infinity from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. This was sent as VCLT from Groovy Lisa months back, I think last spring. I had never heard of this band before Lisa sent this to me, and I absolutely fell in love with this record. I've been meaning to pick up some other albums of theirs, but just haven't gotten around to it. But that's definitely on my list for this year. So, one, I really love this album, but two, I always love seeing that center label spin when I'm playing. It has this type of hypnotic, psychedelic feel to it, so it's really cool to watch spin as you're playing. So going with that. Okay, number 12, pre-band, an album or band that featured someone who became famous. Going with Fuse. This was the band that both Rick Nielsen and Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick, this is the band they were in before Cheap Trick. I'm not going to go into the whole history behind it. I'll save it for another date for whoever is interested in the history of Cheap Trick. But yes, Fuse was the band that they were both in before the creation of Cheap Trick. So, interesting fun fact though about this real quickly, because I'm holding it up and I want to share. Both Rick Nielsen and Tom Peterson are not fans of this album. They talk down on it. I actually don't think it's that bad of an album. I think it could have been mixed better, but in terms of the music itself, I think that it was good, or is good. So I don't know why they talk down on it so much, but I feel like that's a common theme for musicians, especially with earlier music. Sometimes they aren't a fan of it, of what they wrote. So, but yeah, going with that. Okay, number 13, a musical book or movie you'd recommend. I have some books that are always in the back here of my videos, but this book just came out at the end of last year and I'm currently reading it and it is incredible. I'm going with John Mayall's new book, Blues from Laurel Canyon, My Life as a Blues Man. Like I said, I'm reading it right now. It's awesome. It came out back in November of last year, I believe. And if you're a music fan, which I'm sure you all are because you're here, if you're a John Mayall fan, if you're a blues music or British blues music fan, I cannot recommend this book more. Very interesting read, interesting stories, things that I never knew. Definitely, you know, information about the Blues Breakers when he was doing Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton and Peter Green, just a lot of things that I find extremely interesting, so definitely recommend this. Number 14, an underrated album. I've shown this before. This is Cheap Trick's Bang Zoom Crazy Hello, released in 2016. One of my favorite Cheap Trick albums, probably in my top 5, if not top 3, depending on the day. But incredible album for a band that's been around 40 years. This thing rocks. I love it so much, and it's extremely underrated because everyone who thinks about Cheap Trick thinks about Dream Police and In Color and Heaven Tonight, which are all incredible, and I'll get to those albums too later, but Bang Zoom Crazy Hello, a newer release, extremely underrated. Okay, batting average. This one I could have picked a few bands for, and I keep saying that, but it's true. There's so many choices that you can do. The problem with this particular band is that I do not own any physical media, so both vinyl and CD I do not own, but I absolutely love this band and I want to add eventually their records to my collection. But batting average, I didn't think that this band made a bad album or a bad song. I really love them all, so I'm going with The Move, and I printed them out here just to have something to hold up. But this is their first album from 1968, which is good. I'm a huge fan of Roy Wood, that's why, which kind of stems from my love of Rick Nielsen, who loves Roy Wood. That's kind of who introduced me, but I fell in love. This is probably their most famous, from 1970, Shazam. Later that year, they released probably my favorite album of theirs, Looking On. Has Brontosaurus on it. And then their fourth and final in 1971. Definitely has that ELO sound because as they were recording this, they were starting to record ELO. So, for ELO. So, going with The Move. Alright. Number 16. Same album but different cover. We'll do the Blues Breakers, John Mayall with Eric Clapton. Here's the what's called the Beano album. And then here's the same record but the collector's edition. And these two I got signed by John in late July when I saw him perform in Milwaukee. I think I talk about that on an earlier video, but that's that. Number 17, an album you bought cheap that's now worth money. I'm a huge thrift store, estate sale, garage sale person. I'm sure that you know if you've been watching my videos. So I found a lot of really awesome records on the low, whether it's $1 or $2 or sometimes $3. But this is probably my favorite $1 find. Nuggets. I remember when I first showed this and said that I found this for $1, the comments went crazy saying, "You got that for $1?" So yes, this is my favorite cheap find. Again, I spent $1 at an estate sale, and I know that it is worth money. I know that most people do not spend $1 on this record, so extremely excited to have picked that up. 18, favorite drummer. This is where my bias comes in. Going with Bunny Carlos from Cheap Trick. He genuinely is my favorite drummer. Might not, you know, I won't say that he's the best drummer in the world, but he's my favorite drummer. So I do think, however, that he is extremely underrated. So I will say that. Best drummer in the world? No. My favorite drummer? Yes. This is actually his record that he released in 2016, Greetings from Venezuela. Of course, long after he had left Cheap Trick. There's a story behind this album that I'm going to save for another day, but it's kind of a cheesy Bunny Cheap Trick feud story, so whatever. Love him. Love Bunny Carlos. Underrated. Favorite drummer. 19 turning 20, an album turning 20 in 2020. I didn't have one, so I'm going to skip that one. And we'll go to the last one, number 20. A trilogy of albums, 3 solid albums back-to-back from the same artist or bands. So 3 solid albums. You know who I have to end with. I'm going with Cheap Trick. Some of the best trilogy of albums released. Yes, I'm a Cheap Trick fan, but I truly believe that. So 1977, they released their debut, self-titled, my favorite Cheap Trick record. Then later that year, they released In Color, which some of you, this might be familiar to you. It has I Want You to Want Me on it, the studio version. A lot of people I know who don't know a lot about Cheap Trick think that they're going to get the At Budokan version of I Want You to Want Me, and then they listen to the studio version and think, this isn't the same thing. So it's kind of a shock for people who don't know that the I Want You to Want Me they hear on the radio is normally the At Budokan version, but yeah. So great record. And then in 78, they release probably my second favorite, This Is Heaven Tonight. Fantastic record as well. So we made it. 23 minutes in, we're done. I hope you enjoyed this vinyl tag. Let me know what you think about my choices down in the comments below. I love reading and interacting with you all. That's it. That's all I have for this video. I will see you all for my next. Bye, guys.